Thanks, Renee. There we go. Sorry, my recording in progress button got in the way. Let's try that again. Here we go. Well, hi, everybody. I'm going to talk for a few minutes about building staff co-regulation to support healthy relationships in youth. So I've been talking about regulation and self-regulation and co-regulation for years now, and recently was contacted by a colleague who works at the federal level for children, youth, and families, and they've released some new materials around co-regulation, and I thought it was time to share those with you. So let's quickly look at self-regulation first, just so we're all on the same page. Move my little pictures here. Self-regulation is the act of managing your own thoughts, feelings, and behavior in the moment and over time in order to achieve our goals. This includes skills like impulse control, managing distress and anger, decision-making, etc. When we can activate self-regulation, we act in our own long-term best interest. So we learn, however, to self-regulate through our interactions with the people and places around us. We don't just make it up on our own and do it ourselves. Self-regulation, by the way, is related to all of these important things like academic achievement, social competence, positive peer relationships, and really overall well-being. So self-regulation is key to really feeling and being successful as we move forward. And I want to remind everybody that adolescence is a very critical period for self-regulation development, because it's during adolescence that there's this whole brain remodeling. It does some pruning of unused neural connections and pathways and makes these bigger overall connections. And so it's a very important time. Or what do I want to say? When your brain is in the middle of being remodeled, that's an opportunity to get in there and do some work. So while self-regulation and teaching regulation skills is valuable throughout the lifespan from early childhood on through to adulthood, there is this open window of remodeling opportunity during adolescence. And so we don't want to miss that as a potential time to have a pretty big impact. So self-regulation skills do develop with adult co-regulation support. So as young children in family situations, your parents assist you with learning self-regulation, and they co-regulate with you from the time we're infants, and they scoop us up and snuggle us when we're upset about something. But even all the way through adolescence, we really need adult co-regulation support to build the skills that are needed. So first, 3 different categories of skills. First is cognitive, and when we work with adults on co-regulation, we can learn things like flexibility, taking others' perspective, being able to make conscious and intentional decisions, and self-monitoring. How am I doing? How am I doing compared to the people around me? How am I doing compared to my own ideas and goals? The next category of skills are emotional skills. And the first job is to notice emotions. We need to notice, and then we can manage strong or unpleasant feelings. If we're just kind of driven by our emotional feelings without noticing, we can't manage them. So noticing is the first skill. And then this also leads to empathy. Being able to notice our own emotions makes us aware that other people have emotions, and that creates that empathy for others, and which leads to ultimately compassion for both ourselves because we're having strong emotions, and for others. The third category is behavioral skills. The behavioral skills, there are many, but I've just selected some to put on here. One is being able to delay gratification, being able to say, I'm going to wait for this because it gets better, or I collect more, or whatever. But it's really hard initially. And I'm sure you've all seen and been around young kids who can't delay gratification. And so they gobble up whatever they are worried that it won't be there in the future, sort of thing. But we need to learn that skill. We need to learn delaying our own gratification as we go forward. It also, another behavioral skill is persistence. When something is difficult, we don't just throw up our hands and say, well, we can't do this. As a matter of fact, you're all demonstrating some persistence by participating in the ECHO. These are always difficult cases to look at and to work on problem solving interventions and strategies and treatments for, but we show persistence. We dig in and try to keep working until things can be helpful or even resolved. Another behavioral skill is the skill to self-calm. While I'm all about co-regulation, and if I'm upset, I'm definitely going to call a friend or a family member, but being able to sort of get a handle on yourself and calm yourself down is clearly an important skill. And controlling your impulses in order to achieve goals, not just for the sake of delaying gratification or not practicing, not doing things, but when we control our impulses, it's usually for future gains or achieving goals out there. So all of these things are possible when we have adults around us. As youth, we have adults around us who model it and teach these skills to us. So this next slide is a co-regulation framework is pictured here. And this comes out of the study. And by the way, I should have said this up front. At the handout that you can get that will be provided for everybody to go along with the video of this presentation, the handout includes links to this study and to this framework. And again, this comes out of Children, Youth, and Families at the federal level, and this is their framework. And let me walk you through it here a little bit. It is a co-regulation framework, and that's this blue band around the whole thing. And pictured here shows the important influence of adult self-regulation. So holding it together is the adult's ability to self-regulate. And inside the green triangle is the youth's growing self-regulation. It's in the green triangle represents the youth, and at the base of the triangle are the skills to manage thoughts, your cognitive regulation, and feelings, your emotional regulation, which combine to foster short and long-term goal attainment with behavior regulation. The blue donut contains the three core elements that help adults with co-regulating, and it helps staff to implement their work with their youth. So let's start up here with, I should probably be clicking these three elements. So the orange circle up here, orange and white, is about warm, responsive relationships. That's what we've been hearing again and again and again, is that everything happens in the context of a relationship. And if the relationship can be warm, supportive, accepting, and nurturing, all the better. That's going to help and model that co-regulation. The safe, supportive environment is also a requirement. And so when we can make supportive and safe spaces for youth to have their experiences with us in our services, in our programming, in our groups, that's going to be able to build up this idea of regulation. And the third circle is intentional coaching. So we don't just expect them to learn from watching us only, although modeling is a big part of it. We can teach, practice, and reflect on very specific regulation skills while we're working with our youth. And finally, the depiction of the adult self-regulation that wraps around this model like a belt surrounds the pieces of the model that indicate that when staff are able to manage their own thoughts, feelings, and behaviors, they are going to be more effective co-regulators for the youth that they serve. And of course, that makes common sense, but it's nice to put it all together in this format, this model, which is evidence-based co-regulation. And it's an adaptation of models that have been in the process of being built since as early as 2017. So what about those self-regulation skills coaching? Practitioners should be able to boost youth engagement, learning, and program delivery through the intentional support of the youth's self-regulation. To do that, we want to relate warmly and non-judgmentally toward any of our participants, clients, audience, whoever we're working with, and respond to their needs with encouragement, and also create nurturing environments that promote dignity and engender a sense of safety and belonging. So this is going to start stretching over into the issues of diversity and equity and respecting everybody's identities. And really it's that simple. Respect people's own identities and nurture them so that they can feel safe with you. Otherwise, you're probably not going to get as much traction on the programming that might be great, but we have to understand co-regulation and use it to enhance our programming. So during the programming, we want to coach our clients and participants to use these self-regulation skills, and we're going to have hang in there. There'll be some very specific strategies around that in just a moment. But first, we need adults who are self-regulated. They need to be able to, in order to work with the youth, we have to be able to self-regulate ourselves and model all of those things. The research says that providers are most effective in their work with youth when they are aware of their feelings and responses in stressful situations, when they can notice their assumptions, thoughts, and beliefs about the behaviors of the youth and those implications. Because for sure, when youth are exhibiting trauma responses or negative behaviors, we want to nip that in the bud, and that can be frustrating when we're trying to do, especially group programming in any way, shape, or form. And so we have to notice how we feel about that because it impacts how we respond, even non-verbally, our facial responses, our body language, those sorts of things. And we have to use adequate strategies to remain calm and to be able to respond with compassion, even when things are irritating or even when we're stressed, angry, or upset. And these are not new strategies, folks. These are things we know about. Take deep breaths, practice positive self-talk, go for a quick walk, those sorts of things. Teaching staff to improve co-regulation may improve youth outcomes. This is currently under research, but we should be offering life skills, and I'm talking primarily about adolescents here, but we should be offering life skills during adolescence when there is that burst of brain development. There's also a burst of additional peer connections and this drive for independence all happen at the same time. This is a time when social demands increase for the youth, and typically adult supports tend to decrease. They back off, they leave the youth to go do their social thing. And really, we ought to be thinking about how we can be more supportive and more present. The relationship information provided and the skills taught around regulation are timely for adolescents, super relevant because they're getting involved with more and more people, and they typically are of great interest to the youth. They want to know how to have positive, strong relationships. They might not use the word healthy or regulated, but they definitely want to get along with other people. So what are these co-regulation strategies? Workplace strategies that will promote adult regulation include warm, responsive relationships, supportive environments, and skills coaching. Anybody noticing a pattern here? The exact same thing that we want the adults to do with the youth that they work with. Administrative, supervisory, and management should be making those same sort of strategies work for them with the workforce. So workplace strategies that promote self-regulation or co-regulation focus include something called environment scan. Have staff actually complete worksheets on their workplace environment, prompting them to notice and modify stressors and barriers to productivity. And folks, I'm going to go through these next 3 slides. We'll wrap us up, and they are all going to have suggestions about these strategies. And at the end of the PowerPoint, there are links to this report with detailed instructions or descriptions of these strategies. Another strategy they call T3, to learning to take notes, tag it, name it, and then tune in. Notice your sensations, write associated feelings, and use pre-identified strategies to tune or manage intense emotions when they're needed. Personal goal setting. Staff should have goals. Workforce should have goals about what they want to do and be as they grow in their professional role. Identify action steps, encourage buddy systems, and discuss progress towards individual goals. And co-regulation prompts during supervision or during team meetings can really help sort of get that regulation lens on everything. Strategies that are going to promote warm and responsive relationships. So now it's the staff or the workforce working with the youth. Welcoming strategies. They include surveying them. What do they feel is welcoming? Using very personal greetings where you use their name, and frequent check-ins throughout your activities or programs with the youth. And positive praise in 4 parts. The 4 parts are: use their names, be specific about the behavior you're recognizing, praise the effort, not just the skill, and value, talk about the value of that kind of behavior to the program, to the community, to the world at large. That kind of behavior praise or positive praise is way more effective than, wow, what a great job. Okay. The second area of working with the youth is to create those supportive environments, and they suggest group agreements. So having the group come up with how are we going to be together and make a formal agreement, and a rest and return. They call it rest and return. I call it therapeutic breaks. Being able to say, I need a minute here is really a excellent skill for all of us and the youth that we work with. And the last area is skills coaching itself. And they talk about something called bookending. So opening up your session with some sort of skill that you'd like to focus on or improve. And then at the end of your session, reviewing it, going back to it and mentioning it again. Using your breath to refocus. Are we having a strong emotion? Are we feeling things? And how about a couple of deep belly breaths with a long exhale? And taking note. And by taking note, they're just saying recognizing, being mindful, being reflectful that we have emotions, and it makes us want to think and say and do things. I know my time is up here, and here is a slide that has the links to these studies. And interestingly, the second one here, measuring co-regulation, is actually a tool to observe, and it says educators, but it's really for anybody working with youth. And how do the supervisors and management get their staff to use these tools? And this is a checklist on how you can do that. Here's the big report. And then the last resource is a YouTube video about why, if we want youth to get better and our youth outcomes to improve, we need to build adult capabilities to do that. Thanks very much.